Hey guys, welcome back to my layout and world of modeling. It's Dan here as always, and in this video I'm going to get you guys caught up on the progress I've made on some different projects over the last 2 months here. I might be able to talk about the layout a little bit here, not too much going on out here other than I'm just preparing for my laundry list of April and May maintenance that I need to get done on the layout. We'll talk about that a little bit and maybe show you guys some plans that I have kind of coming up on different things that I've kind of changed my mind about. I got a lot of stuff going on out here. Some of it I cannot show you guys until it's actually completed, so bear with me. It's going to be a real treat for you guys when it is finished. But anyways, like I said, I got a number of cars that I mentioned in the last video that are kind of obscure, sort of different kinds of cars I don't normally do. And it's been a nice, refreshing little break. But again, it's some of these cars are ones that I've been wanting to do for some time, and I've had the cars in storage, you know, and again, just like everything else, I decide, okay, I'm either going to do these things up or I'm going to sell them, and so I force myself to pull them out of storage, work on them, and get them done. So a lot of the cars you're going to see in this video are models like that, and some other interesting projects that I've gotten done over the last couple weeks here. And also, I got my first locomotive done of the year, and I'm going to go ahead and show you guys that here in a little bit as well. So a lot of cool stuff to look at on this video. Let's go ahead and jump right into this and get started, guys. Alright guys, these first 3 cars I'm going to show you are plain gray 4750 covered hoppers. I've been working on these, trying to get a small little collection of just plain gray, boring looking cars done to mix into my mixed freights, because it's very prototypical to see cleaner cars like this. You know, not every car is a rust bucket or is a piece of crap just covered in graffiti. A lot of these cars are pretty clean that you see in general service, so I wanted to have at least a couple of these cars that represent what you see out there in real life, on any railroad for that matter. This first car here is a Tangent 4750. This used to be a GTX painted car. All I did with this one, stripped all of the lettering off, the GTX lettering, and then I completely re-decaled the car using Smokebox Graphics decals, both the MWCX decal sheet, and I also used various data sheets to do the car data and everything like that. It's got the real safety striping on it, of course. The entire car is gloss coated, and then in terms of weathering, all I did here, a little light kick up on the ends, rust and grime on the couplers, the trucks, the underbays, of course. All that's going to be your general type of weathering for a car like this. Pretty clean, pretty straightforward, nothing crazy, nothing special. It's the exact same thing on the opposite side. The roof is pretty clean, other than a little bit of dusty grime done with some chalk work. Other than that, pretty clean car. The next one here is going to be another MWCX. Now this is a more common type of MWCX 4750. This will be an older style 4750 with the compressed decal font. This car was done again with Smokebox Graphics decals. It started as a plain gray, undecorated Intermountain 4750, and I stripped all the lettering off, re-decaled the car, added safety striping, a little bit of grime, some dust work, you know, a little bit of kick-up things like that, just on the underbays. The trucks have to be weathered, of course. Even a repainted car like this, generally the trucks are still going to be really grimy. They don't replace the trucks unless they need to, so that's why you see that a lot of times on these kinds of cars. It might be kind of confusing because you'll see a car like this and then you'll look at the trucks or other parts of the car that look really dirty, and it's just because normally, you know, they're not going to refurbish the trucks, the wheel sets, or things like that. It'll be the old set of trucks that's been under the car for years, unless that there's a reason they need to change them out. So anyways, in terms of other weathering on this one, it's a little bit more dirty. It's got some very slight staining on the sides done with some oil streaking. There's a little bit of pinning on the top rail there, but nothing crazy. Trucks and wheels, like I said, are weathered there. Now the next one is a PLCX car, and PLCX owns a number of 4750s, as you guys know. With this car, again, this was just weathered and decaled according to photos of similar PLCX repaints. This one has a little bit of load spillage. This is quicklime, I believe, and it's streaked down all over the side of the car. The underbays have a little bit of grime, just mainly the kick-up. Wheels and trucks, grimed up. All these cars, again, feature the mud splatter and mud caked up on the truck frames. That's a detail I'm really going to try to focus on getting done on all of these cars from now on. Pretty much every car you see has mud on the truck frames, and it's a detail I've kind of omitted, unfortunately, on a lot of my models, so I'm trying to go back and add that now. But again, like I said, load spillage on both sides, a lot of load spillage on the top, but other than that, pretty clean car. No graffiti, nothing like that, just clean, plain and simple, and ready for service. Alright guys, this next car here is a NARC covered hopper. I forget what particular type of covered hopper. It's the new Richmond 3-bay covered hopper that they just released. These cars sold out very quickly, and the ones that ended up going up on eBay started commanding some pretty high prices. I was fortunate enough, and a buddy of mine got me this one for 40 bucks, so that's what I paid for it, was $40. So that worked out really well. I only got one. Honestly, I only really needed one. I don't see a whole bunch of these regularly. And anyways, with this Fearx car, I just weathered it from prototype photos. The whole car has the weld seams darkened and grimed up a little bit. There's some rust pitting just starting on that top cord where it meets the roof. There's a lot of rust forming up there very quickly, even on these newer cars. That area, for whatever reason, starts to rust relatively quickly. There's a little bit of grime, a little bit of kick up on the ends, and there's just a small little bit of scribble tag work, a little bit here and on the very end of the car. Pretty simple weathering, just a little bit of grime on the top, not too much going on the walkway. That's why I'm not even bothering to show you guys, because there's really nothing up there. Wheels and trucks are weathered up. The underbays, again, of course, are weathered just very slightly, as you can see. Now, the opposite side is the really neat side. On this side here, I wanted to do a nice piece of graffiti, or several nice pieces of graffiti for this matter. Now, if I set the car up, you can actually see some of this. What I did was I used prototype photos of a similar Fearx car, not this exact number, but I used a similar prototype to replicate the graffiti from. That's all done with acrylic paint pens and markers, a little bit of hand painted acrylic work, all the highlights, everything like that is done with fine brush work. All the scribble work, borders, backgrounds, all the color flashing, everything like that is done with a traditional paintbrush and acrylic paints. But all of the main bits of the graffiti, the base portions of the graffiti, are all done with the paint pens. And it's a really great way to do these bits of graffiti on a smooth side car like this, because with those felt tip pens, they travel over the corners of the car relatively easy. And I found that that's the best technique to use for a car like this. And then, like I said, you come in with the brush techniques to do all of the fine detail work on the pieces, and they come together very well. So this car turned out to be a real fun one to do. It took me about a week to do, which is not too bad, just with my current schedule. But I'm really happy with all the work that I put into it, and it looks really good. This next car is a CPAA 4750, and this is a rare Intermountain 4750 that I weathered up from photos of a similar car. With this particular car, it's got a lot of running rust on the sides, and this proved to be a really fun car to do. I heavily grimed up the underbody first. I put all the kick up and grime, dirt, dust, rust pitting, gouging, scrapes, and everything on the underbase first with different acrylic washes, oil washes, some airbrush work to blend things in. Did all the kick up and everything on the ends, both ends. And then I slowly but surely started to build up some of that rust on the sides using brush techniques and a lot of oils. So I used burnt umber oil first, and then a little bit of raw sienna later on after everything kind of dried up. And I just layered this until I was happy with the rust. It's got a lot of pitting on the sides, as you can see. On the top of the car, you got the replacement hatches, and you also have some replacement walkway sections, as you can see. That's a pretty common thing you see on these 4750s, is sections of walkway that they replace, hatches that they replace, and then everything else is just completely caked in rust, as you can see. So it's a mixture of oil and acrylic work and powder work to do the rust on the top there. On the opposite side of the car, this side here has just a little bit of graffiti. It's all scribble work. Other than that, very, very simple stuff. And then you can see there's a lot of rust starting to work its way down the side of the car. And I really like doing that effect with that oil paint, because you get such a rich, rusty tone that's very authentic for a car like this. I believe this particular car is either in salt service or grain service, possibly fertilizer service. I'm not exactly sure. But I just got it kind of roaming around my model road right now as a miscellaneous service car that I can put in any kind of consist and just run as either an idler car or a loaded car. But again, the weathering just looks phenomenal on this thing. It's really, really nice car. I mentioned in the beginning of the video that I had a number of cars that had been in storage for a number of years that I was trying to get rid of or either work on, and I chose to fix these up either to sell or keep, and in the end I decided to keep these because they turned out so nice. This is going to be a pair of Atlas 25,000 gallon tank cars. The first one here is an ADMX car. It is heavily faded, and that is actually from the factory. Atlas did a version of the ADMX repaints that have the very heavy fading, and they only did 2 or 3 numbers of this car. I actually have both numbers. I'm keeping this one and I'm selling the other, but this car does have a similar sister car. Anyways, what I did with this one was the heavy rust buildup on the top. A car like this gets a lot of condensation and moisture, and you start to see the paint bubble, and then rust very quickly starts to form on the tops of these panels on these cars. There's just something about corn syrup cars in general, these chemical cars, they very quickly start to accumulate rust. And so for all the rust on this car, which was the main bit of weathering I did to this, I used sponge work and a little bit of brush work, just kind of dry brushing that rust on there, dabbing it on, not streaking it, but dabbing it on. And same thing with the sponge. I just used that sponge applicator and I mixed a little bit of burnt umber and raw sienna oil together to create that particular rust tone that you see on the car that looks very convincing. I think this one was done off of prototype photos. I'm not 100% sure, or at the very least it was done off photos of similar cars. But it's got a lot of the corn syrup spillage down the side, that really black greasy residue that's all over the tank body. As you can see, it's actually splattered up in different areas in the car body as well. Other than that, there's a lot of kick up on the underbody, all the typical work that I like to do. There's a lot of fine streaking, a lot of fine grime and everything like that done with very fine brush work using powders and oils. The trucks have that bright rusty reddish kind of rust, very typical of an ADM car like this. Replaced the couplers, of course, with KDs, real safety striping. Other than that, just working a lot with that rust and different oil techniques and things to create that load spillage. It ended up turning out to be a really, really nice modern car, and another that I can throw into my mixed freights for vegetable oil service. This next car, PLMX 25136. This guy is weathered pretty much the same as the ADMX car, just with a subtle variation in techniques. I used a lot more acrylic sponge work on the top to do that particular type of rust. Again, it's just consuming the top of the car right now. Heavy fading on the sides, that's all done with a fade coat through the airbrush. It has all the brush techniques, all the heavy streaking on the underbody, which will actually go ahead and pull this car off. If we take a look at the underbody, you can see exactly what I'm talking about. This is just a matter of taking oil and then streaking it up and then blending it out with a little bit of thinner. It's a very easy technique to do, but it creates that very prototypical streaking that you see on a lot of these cars, because you know a lot of these have that. Some of them don't, not all of them, but a number of them do have that kind of streaking. And so I've played around with the technique an awful lot lately, actually. And I've been able to perfect it to a point where I can do these cars regularly now and get that effect pretty much every single time, and it turns out really good. Added the safety striping, faded the lettering a little bit, lots of grime, kick up, fully weathered trucks, new KD couplers, safety striping like I mentioned, and then there's a lot of this greasy residue. And in this case, unlike the ADMX car, which had more of a flat, grimy black spillage, I used oil stains to do all of this, and then I splattered it a little bit too. Similar to the method of what I like how to do the kick up, I used to splatter some of that staining around those top manway hatches and things like that, just to try to make it look like a different kind of technique. Just again, experimenting with techniques right now and different materials with these oil stains. The oil stains I'm using are AK Interactive products, I believe, and so far I'm actually pretty happy with the results. The only thing is that material, it's really hard to clean off your brushes, so if you're going to use that stuff, make sure you have a dedicated brush that you use for it, and don't mix up your good brushes with the brushes that are dedicated for that material, because it will leave a residue on those bristles that's somewhat hard to get off. I got to really soak the brushes in thinner to get it all off. But anyways, looking at the other side here real quick, it's pretty much the same weathering. if I can get this thing back on the track. As you can see, just some rust spots and things like that on the sides. Just little things to really make this thing kind of pop in detail. But overall, I'm really happy with the weathering. There you can see a little bit of that fine scribble work I also did. That was all done using a fine tip paint pen. The next two cars, and actually the last two cars for this video, are going to both be gondolas. And I really like to take my time with gondolas, so honestly these things, they came out really awesome. They took a lot of time, but I think that time really speaks in translation to what you see on the sides of the car with the amount of weathering that they have. This first one is a TILX car, and with this one I just beat the ever-loving crap out of it by pitting up the sides. I did a lot of grime work, rust pitting, scrapes, gouges, and a lot of custom patchwork done with trim film black decals. The stock car is just an Atlas model, Atlas Thrall Gondola. Or actually, yeah, this is a Thrall prototype, sorry. I added the safety striping to the sides, lots of graffiti. And actually, these things look so good, we better just go ahead and take the camera off the tripod for this so we can get in nice and close. And I'll try to be as still as I can be. But basically you can see the amount of oil work I did to the sides. I just rusted all over the sides of these things using oils first, and then I added some powders and streaked those down over the sides. Now for the interior, the entire interior was first weathered with oils, and then I used chalks to go in there and blend them out. Next thing I did was I actually sponged in some more oil, and then I let the oils actually expand over the powders to create this greasy residue that looks like old puddles of mud or grime kind of mixed in with that fresh rust. This is very prototypical to what you see on a car like this, and it was a technique I wanted to experiment with, and honestly it ended up being turning out to be a great success, so I'm really happy that I experimented with that. Again, on the sides there you can see all the hand-drawn graffiti that I did. The cars have all of that weathering all the way around on both ends there, as you can see. That rust is just killer on this car. The opposite side of the car is kind of a mess. It's covered in some very old graffiti, honestly really crappy graffiti, but I like elements like this because it shows age to the car, so to speak, where a lot of this graffiti was done years ago and it's fading into the car, it's weathering into the car. I know I mentioned that a lot. I really like that kind of artwork where it ages with the model, so to speak. But all this is hand painted, and then the rest of the little bits of scribble and things like that, that's all hand drawn onto the car using the Jelly Roll ink pens. The Jelly Roll pens come in a lot of different grade fine tips. I use a 0.5 dot pen, I believe, and that does really good at creating the very fine detailed script lettering, and then I use a broader tip to do the coarser spray graffiti, as you can see. Well, I just spoke about how I like old graffiti, and this car is another great example of old graffiti on an old prototype. This SIG-X gondola here is custom patched. It's another Atlas Thrall gondola. All the graffiti is hand painted in this particular case, and it's very aged into the side of the car. It's got lots of side scrapes, lots of chipping, lots of pitting, and a lot of that rust is starting to bleed through the sides now as the car continues to get distressed and age in its service. Lots of rust, a lot of the data has been re-stenciled, as you can see, primer patches, new safety striping put over it, but it's interesting with this car because you can see the mixture of the old and the new safety striping applied over the side of the car. Once again, take this off here so we can get a better look. I really wanted you guys to see this interior work here, and also the work I did to the top cord. For the top cord weathering, I wanted it to look like coarse chipping rust, so I used a coarse sponge to add all of that oil work. I let it dry fully, and then I added some powder work and things like that to enhance it, but that's all done with a coarse painting sponge, which you can find at Hobby Lobby. In a small pack, actually, you can usually get a couple of them. Now the interior is pretty much done exactly the same way as the TILX car. Just built up the weathering and then layered in some fresh oils, a little bit of powder to make it look nice and dirty. This one has the reporting mark stencil on the inside of the car, just spray can work there. It's just little details like that that really make a car like this look a lot more realistic. So you can see there's a large variety of techniques used to create all of the weathering effects on this beautiful model. Well guys, what kind of update wouldn't be complete without a locomotive? And in this case I got a really cool SD40-2 I've been working on, actually for about a month now. Well, actually even longer than that. I think I started this, I want to say I started this in probably February, I think actually. This is an Athearn SD40-2 painted for BNSF. This is a locomotive I've had in storage for about 2 years now. And it's taken quite a while to actually get around to this thing, but I wanted to do a BNSF patched SD40-2 like this one because this is a locomotive I actually used to see a lot of. BNSF used to send a lot of their SD40-2s on run-through freights in Fostoria back in the 2000s, and so this locomotive kind of goes along well with some of my older lease power. So that's kind of why I wanted to do one of these, and I was really spending a lot of time trying to figure out what number I wanted to do, and then I actually decided to do unit 7897 because it's so cool with the full BNSF patching, and it has the nose light, because I love the look of these BNSF units with the nose light still in the BN green. One of my favorite phases of BN SD40-2s, I mean the late phase SD40-2s with the Kia fans are also pretty cool. Matter of fact, I'd really like to do another BNSF SD40-2 with the Q fans, but that's another project for another day. Anyways, with this one, I just took an Athearn RTR SD40-2. It actually happened to be a BNSF unit. I stripped all the paint off of it, and I replaced the nose with a proper nose light nose, or nose light equipped nose. And I actually shortened this one. Or no, I didn't shorten this. Actually, I lengthened it. So I used styrene and putty to lengthen the nose to the correct length, which in this case is an 88-inch nose. The stock nose is an 81-inch. Athearn does not make an 88-inch nose light nose for these. So I did all that, and then I custom painted the entire thing using Tamiya colors. So the faded green has that nice bluish aqua tint to it, and that's using the Tamiya green, which looks really nice. Full cab details, interior. So the seats, control stand, gauges, all that good stuff. Added all the appropriate antennas, eye bolts, correct horn, all the antennas, all the stuff like that. Like I said, all the truck detailing, so sanding lines, the piping, speed recorder, and then all the front pilot details are added. Snowplow, new ditch lights, MU jumpers, all that has been modeled appropriately. Got the class light covers there, and all the little details that I had to add to the nose as well. Running down the side of the engine here, you can see the fuel tank, the appropriate fuel tank. That is a shortened Athearn tank to get the appropriate spacing and size for this unit. And that has the waste retention tank, which is scratch built. Well, actually, no, this one doesn't even have the waste retention tank. That's just the hose there. I forgot about that. The rear truck, again, same level of detail, and then the weathering is all done off of the prototype photo, so a lot of grime, a lot of rust, a lot of mud splatter, lots of grime work. Fully decaled according to the prototype, as you can see. All that came out really, really nice, and then to weather the thing, it's just a lot of fine oil and powder work. As you can see, lots of oil and powder work. Lots of fading to the top, lots of rust around the fans along the top there. This unit has seen better days. The rear hood has some really cool detailing. Again, that's all based off prototype photos. I like the dual MU receptacle cluster there. And then I added the jumper cable, of course, on this rear end with the drop step. Lots of mud splatter on the pilots, if you notice that, coupled with those really nice rust effects. There is a crap ton of rust on the walkways, especially coming off that long hood. And then look at all the little rust pits and scrapes and gouges on that rear hood. That is real nice. That rust is on point too. That is phenomenal rust. This thing really came out so good, actually. Carefully turn this around here. And there you can see the opposite side with all of the appropriate detailing. I just love that tone of rust too on the trucks. That's just a combination of earth brown and black acrylics first, and then I do a little bit of powder work mainly around the top of the truck, and then I just kind of streak it down, and I'll add varying layers of powder regarding maybe some light rust, some darker rust, some red rust. stuff like that, of course. And then at almost every occasion, these things have the greasy blackened bearing covers, those Hyatt bearing covers. So I model that with the black powder. And then these trucks are caked in mud splatter as well. So they got a lot of miles on them and a lot of road grime. And then there's a lot of streaking, fine streaking on the fuel tank. The fuel gauges are in the correct location. I had to change those. And then there's the front of the cab there with those specific details and lots of nice rust. The only thing I did differently on this prototype, the BNSF patch is pretty scraped up. At least that's what it looked like before it got repatched. I chose not to model it that way. I thought it looked kind of ugly. So I just chose to model it with the full BNSF decal instead of making it look all torn up. So that's pretty much the BNSF unit. And again, I'm really happy with how that came out. It's fully equipped with DCC and it's ready to run on the layout, pulling some freight. Last fun story about this engine. Some of you guys might look at this number and think, hey, I'm pretty sure this was made in HO scale, and you'd be right to assume that. Scale Trains actually made this exact locomotive. And it's funny because I didn't even realize that, and it never dawned on me until someone pointed that out to me, and I was like, oh shoot, they're right. And it's a funny coincidence because at the time when Scale Trains did that first run of BNSF units, this was the number I actually thought about getting, and I hesitated and I waited, and of course they sold out. I think they actually sold out all three, well actually two. The really faded BNSF unit, the one that had that really crazy green, and then this one sold out within like 2 hours off the Scale Trains website. The other one, whatever patch version they did, lingered on the website for like another day, and then that one sold out. And that's just how it goes. You know, these things are in high demand. I honestly wish Scale Trains would do more of them, but there you go. It's kind of a funny story. I ended up with my 7897 in the end, and honestly an even better version of the 7897, so it paid to wait in the end. Anyways, that's my BNSF SD40-2, guys. Hopefully you like that. And just to give you a little sneak peek of some other locomotives that are coming up, I'm working on a GMTX GP38 right now. This is an Atlas unit. This guy I'm in the process of filming, so I will have a raw build series coming up for this particular engine, so stay tuned for that. I also have an SD40N in the works. UP1574. This is a SD40N, like I said. We'll bring this in the light here just so you guys can see this a little bit better. I've taken the time to correct all of the details to be more prototypical, so I've relocated the ditch lights higher up on the pilot so that those are in a more prototypical location, and those are fully lit with LEDs. New details, like I said, 3D printed snowplow. Didn't have to do anything to the nose, but I did add like PTC, lift rings and things like that, and of course all the appropriate detailing on the rear hood as well. And I also removed the class lights, and I completely repainted the rear hood since a lot of the detailing on this end was just straight up wrong, to be honest. Typical Ather and L with their locomotives these days, but what do you do? At least they made the scheme, right? I'm waiting for the Scale Trains SD40Ns like everybody else. Actually, I'm waiting for the CSX YN2 SD40-2s too. I got my pre-order in, so I'm waiting for those like everybody else. But in the meantime, I'm working on my Athearn, my last Athearn UP SD40-2 to do. So that's another locomotive you guys can stay tuned for. That'll hopefully be in the next upcoming update. Anyways, that's going to be my locomotives, guys. And to wrap up this video, we're going to go back out to the garage, and I'm going to show you guys some updates on the layout. Okay, so lastly, guys, I'm going to talk about the layout again, and I haven't done a whole lot out here. I'm just making another inventory list of things that I would probably like to go ahead and change. And as you can see, nothing has really changed out here with this module. Like I said in the last video, all the track work is finished. This is all ready to be done. The issue that I'm having here is rethinking a lot of my track work. Something that I've been having issues with is my yard lead. The switch itself is fine, but the curve into the yard is so tight that occasionally I'm having some cars pop off the tracks. And I'm not having this problem really anywhere else. This is pretty much the only curved turnout I have. And it sucks because the idea would have worked, but I'm just having a lot of issues with this turnout in particular, and I've also had issues with this switch causing some shorts on some of my engines. So it's just really frustrating having to battle with these Pico turnouts. I know some people swear by them and other people say, oh, never use Pico turnouts, build your own, or use Atlas or Walters turnouts or something like that. And I like the Pico turnouts, but anymore I'm just kind of thinking I would rather have this taken out so that this is all a curve, and then I just fix this curve to follow the track and then have it connect in like this switch here, but reversed so that the yard lead comes off a straight switch. It would also make a little bit more sense for my particular diorama, because what I want to do over here is have pretty much a road crossing that crosses over 2 tracks instead of 3 at this point. And I want to have trees on both sides, so a nice forested area with a little alley, some signals and stuff like that. And then I'd like to have a backdrop that obviously would cover up my giant garage door, and then we'd have to work on some lighting. It's a little hard because I have the garage door set up over here, so I don't know if I'd have to maybe build like a little shelf or something above to have an LED light strip or light bar set up here. I am going to start working on experimenting with some backdrop work and some LED lighting to try to improve some of the lighting conditions. It's going to be incorporated into a little project that I'm doing that I've hinted at, but I'm not going to go into too much detail about right now. That's going to have to be saved for later. But it's just stuff that I want to kind of experiment with and get familiar with that I can start using. Because at this point, like I said, the layout is pretty much done. I can jump right now and run a train on this. But I'd just rather have it set up where there's better lighting and all the tracks and everything work for the scenes, instead of it always being a constant frustration or having it be a thing for me where I'm always just sitting there, oh man, I wish I would have done it differently. And this just comes down to me and really how I plan things. You know, I was anxious to get things going out here, and I rushed around to get things done. In hindsight, I just really wish I would have maybe done a couple of variations of the track plan first, because I'm just regretting it. But basically what I'm going into here to show you guys what I want to change is I'm thinking about taking out this third track, the siding. I'm thinking about cutting all this out, taking that switch out, replacing it with a switch, a left-hand switch that goes into a yard lead, and then having the yard lead run in instead of it being connected here in a curved turnout, because at this point I'm sick and tired of dealing with curved turnouts. Just, they're so annoying. Every other switch at this point is fine. All my straight turnout switches, perfectly fine, no problems. The curved turnouts, it's just going to be another thing that's a constant headache, and I'm tired of dealing with. And I think that this would be better in the long run. So what I'm thinking of doing is taking out this track and then putting in a switch here that connects into the main line, which would be technically more prototypical, and I'd still have, you know, a pretty good length of siding to be able to store my trash trains in. I don't need to store, you know, a 100 or 80 car trash train like they do in the real life. I think the real east set off, or rather this is actually the west set off, because CSX is weird. We're going east here towards Tiffin, Ohio. For any of you guys who are familiar, this is supposed to be a model road of Fostoria, Ohio. For any of you who are not familiar with my layout or my work, there's a switch on this main line where they store cars, and it cuts off it'd pretty much be a couple more yards here maybe before it would cut in. But obviously with compression I'd have to have this curve here for the turnout, and it would just be better to have a switch here that would connect into this. So at least it'd be a little bit more prototypical, and it would also eliminate this third curve and the issues that I've had in the past with this turnout being real tight. These turnouts here are fine. They're ready to go. I'm ready to finish the ballasting and all the scenery on these. These are all done. This track is the one that we've had to correct a number of times now, and if I eliminate this, then that eliminates the possibility of having future issues with this again. So that would also rectify another problem. So, you know, I'm just kind of tallying up the things that this would fix by doing it this way. And of course it would have to suck, because I'd have to rip up all this track and then clean up the ballast and then redo some of the scenery. But all this is, when it officially is done, will be bushes anyway. So, I mean, it's not the end of the world. Matter of fact, I'm even thinking about shortening this up and cutting into this a little bit so that it's not as wide a path. There just simply doesn't need to be this much open space because there's no industries here. There's nothing that's out here other than it's just a rural field in the real life prototype. So anyways, my idea here is putting in a new switch, changing this around and eliminating all this track going around the curve. So we would only have a 2-track main, and at this end we'd have a new switch. We'd eliminate that curve turnout and have it just be a yard lead that runs into a straight switch right here. And then, obviously, once all this track work is officially done, then I can finish all this here and everything else in the back, because I've obviously been waiting to do some stuff there, and I really need to get out here and finish that section, but I've been so tied up with other projects. So it's just a work in progress there, but we're so close on getting this thing done. I know I keep saying that, and hopefully you guys aren't getting annoyed, but this is just what happens. You kind of come out here, and anymore, it's just like my ideas kind of change, and I really have to reevaluate things and rethink things. But I guess the moral of the story, again, is don't be afraid to have to make changes. It's always okay. You can always change things, and in the end, you get something that's even better, that you're like, oh man, this is so much better. All that work was worth it. You know, it sucks to have to come out and tear up track and do all this over again and change things. But in the long run, it pays off because you get more enjoyment, less frustration, and you get more satisfaction out of having done things the right way and having it set up exactly how you want it to be, where you can enjoy it and you can enjoy watching the trains go around it and not have to worry about issues. And that's pretty much where I am. So that's really why I've held off so long on actually getting this whole scene fixed, because it's like we get out here and I'm ready to bunny hop back into this, and I'm like, whoa, wait a minute, there's this problem. Or wait a minute, before I do more scenery, why am I going to do more scenery if I'm having issues with this track? Let's finish this track first. And then I finish it, and then there's another issue with another section of that same track, and it's just like, I'm done with it. I'm ready to make the change and just be done with it, so I can get back to enjoying the fun part, which is doing the scenery, because that's really what I love to do. Track work isn't fun. Obviously, I'm not building a model road just to do scenery. The track work is the main piece of it, but at this point I'm just sick and tired of doing track work, and I'm just ready for it to be done, and so this is the best way of doing it. So anyways, that's the update on the layout, guys. Like I said, the good news is that until I actually cut out track sections to lay in new switches, all this is still perfectly fine. I can keep running trains out here, and my main goal in April is to try to get out here and get some more film of trains actually running on the layout, because obviously that's what you guys want to see. I really want to try to do some yard operations too, but I've really been in this process too of getting out here, and I've been testing all of this rolling stock. I've been bringing boxes and boxes of rolling stock out here and getting things tested, and I'm finding out, oh man, well this car doesn't track very well, or I need to replace the trucks on this, or I need to get new couplers for this thing, or I'm having coupler height issues. So the main reason I've even been running trains out here, and I have all these cars out here other than the stuff that's sitting in the yards, obviously that's for display and for prototypical operations. The cars that are actually on the main line right now are not really necessarily out here to run a train with, but they're out here to be tested. And so a lot of these cars I've pretty much had out being tested, and I've been able to get issues fixed on them. There's a couple cars that still need some work. I mean, I got some stuff like some of these gondolas, the rail guns in particular, the way I did some of the brake rigging, I have to change some of that around and readjust these. But some of my rail guns, like these last two, are the last two guns that I have to work on. So they've been out on the layout waiting to get worked on, and just some other stuff. But that's, you know, just another part of doing all this stuff. You just troubleshoot things, and once you get everything fully up and running, then you can run the big long trains and have no problems, and you can actually have that enjoyment factor again. Right on. So anyways, guys, that's going to wrap up this update for the end of this month here. I really appreciate you guys following along here. Stay tuned for some more project videos coming up. Keep an eye out for those new locomotives that are coming too. Those will be in the next update, hopefully, if I get them done in time. Lots more rolling stock to come, and hopefully some more weathering videos coming up. I got a couple more things got in the pipeline that I'll hopefully be showing you guys here pretty soon. So subscribe here on YouTube for more content coming in the future, and follow me here. Until next time, thank you guys for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Take it easy.